Hello everyone, and welcome to our podcast series in the classical political economy tradition by the Vinson Centre for the Public Understanding of Economics and Entrepreneurship at the University of Buckingham. The Vinson Centre runs a series of programs in economics and related fields designed to promote a wider understanding of classical liberal economics and how markets, trade and entrepreneurship promote welfare in a free society. I'm Dr. Juan Castañeda, Director of the Vinson Centre, and today we'll be hosting Mikko Arevuo. Mikko Arevou is an economist and management scholar at Cranfield School of Management. He's also a member of the Academic Advisory Council at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Mikko's research interests are in the areas of decision-making under uncertainty and humane economy where wealth is produced justly, avoiding greed, deceit and fraud. Today we'll discuss with Mikko his research on Adam Smith's a strawman for unfettered capitalism, which is a paper he's been working on. Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about the motivation for the paper.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today. Yes, in fact, Adam Smith was born in 1723, so this year is his 300-year anniversary, and to commemorate that, I thought I try to turn my hand on Adam Smith and try to understand his moral philosophy and how it ties with his more well-known book, The Wealth of Nations. And the paper is looking at the interaction between self-interest and morality.
Perfect. Mikko, I have had the opportunity to read your paper, and I understand it's now under review for publication. May I start by reading a passage from your introduction? Smith's political economy laid the foundations for modern economics, arguing that markets should be free from government intervention. However, Smith's ideas about economics were not divorced from his moral philosophy. He believed that economics and morals were inextricably linked and that a healthy economy depended on a society of virtuous individuals. Can you tell us a bit more about the connection between Smith's theory of moral sentiments and the wealth of nations?
Yes, so that's a great question, and in fact that there has been in the scholarship dating back to the 1900s a division that has been, in my opinion, artificially created between two Smiths. One is the Adam Smith of the theory of moral sentiments that talks about sympathy and his work on moral virtues, and the other one is the Wealth of Nations, where he talks about the free markets and a small government, and this artificial separation has created a feeling that Adam Smith changed his mind after he wrote the theories of moral sentiments and start promoting a system that is purely focused on self-interest, and this actually dates back to the Chicago School in modern times, when prominent economists such as Milton Friedman was talking about the invisible hand, and where individuals purely behave based on their self-interest, and that will then result in positive consequences to the society as a whole. Now, based on the research I've done across various different economic syllabuses, the self-interest is today often viewed as greed, and greed, of course, is harmful for individuals, it's harmful for the society as a whole, but the self-interest, when it's been translated into the greed, has forgone all the moral foundations. And in fact, what Adam Smith was talking about is that self-interest is an important motivation in certain transactions, commercial transactions, but at the same time, the self-interest is guided and governed by certain moral values, such as cooperation. So the separation between the theory of moral sentiments and the the wealth of nations is an artificial contract, and most Adam Smith scholars would probably agree with me that there is no Adam Smith problem.
So, in your opinion, the anthropology that Smith sets up in his theory of moral sentiments is still very much present also in the Wealth of Nations.
Absolutely. He talks about the transactions whereby the benevolence does not enter into a commercial transaction, but I produce something that you want and you buy something for me that I want, so we both have a benefit. But there's also a moral dimension to all of us, and in the theory of moral sentiments, Adam Smith actually talks about a man's basic instinct to be wanting to be loved and to be loved, and in commercial transactions and the way we behave in a society as productive members, those sympathies and those emotions are very much part of what guides also our self-interest.
Well, and this is not just a question of two academics discussing Smith's views, because this is very much present in day-to-day discussions about economics issues. In fact, greed has been used by many to explain economic crises, such as the global financial crisis a few years back now, and also the rise in inflation in the last couple of years. So can you tell us a bit more on something you have already elaborated, but if you can tell us more details about Smith's concept of self-interest as compared to greed?
Yes, so the way that, well, I think the best way to describe self-interest, it is a moderated greed, so that there are other emotions and motivations involved when we transact with each other, and perhaps we can use the term animal spirits. So we have a motivation to improve ourselves. We have a motivation to maximize our utility. But at the end of the day, in order to do so continuously, we need to engage in cooperative agreements with others.
Mm-hmm. So it's very much putting the individual in the society as the right context to analyze their behavior.
That's very true.
How classical political economy transformed into the marginal revolution by the end of the 19th century?
Well, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. So the marginal revolution that we can date back to 1870s began to focus on economic decision making at margin, and the ideas of utility maximization became the key, and that transformed economics into more positivist science. So the normative issues that Adam Smith and the classical economists wrote about disappeared from the study of and practice of economics. And in fact, John Robinson, she writes about this and says that the marginal revolution was the ideology that ended all ideologies. So economics became a value-free science, and of course when we think about human activity and human decision making, we are not just pure utility maximizing machines.
I don't think that I am.
Yeah, exactly. So we have all kinds of other motivations, and of course when we look at economics as a science, by taking out the normative aspects, gives us a feeling that economics is a science comparable to the physics, for example, and I think that recent work on behavioral economics is beginning to inform and bring back some of the cognitive aspects into our decision-making processes, not to replace the current paradigm in economic theory, but to supplement that and to complement that.
So you believe that by adopting this broader approach to human action, if you like, using Mrs. very famous book, you think that this would contribute to a better understanding of economic phenomena?
Oh, very much so.
Mm-hmm. So, following Smith's analysis of markets and individual behavior, how can we reconcile the study of economics with the moral philosophy? Say that you are in charge of resetting the curriculum in economics. Do you think there is scope to introducing moral philosophy in the programs?
Well, I think so. So with my work with graduate students, the feedback I get from them is that we do some elegant equations and algorithms, but at the end of the day, what are the predictive values of that? How does that inform us as individuals and larger entities, decision-making entities, to behave in a way that may be or should be socially acceptable? And when I talk to the business students, very often the thinking that I hear is questions: what can I get away with, rather than what I should be doing. And of course that's a huge difference. And I'm trying to bring some of the classical economists like Smith and Hume into classroom and say, hey, look, we are talking about economic transactions, but at the same time, let's look at the motivations that are not necessarily that easily quantifiable in theory into the fray as well.
I had a wonderful professor, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning his name today, Rafael Rubidurquia in University Autónoma in Madrid. And he taught us at graduate level an excellent course in economics. And he used to tell us, do dissect the anthropological assumptions behind the agent that we have in our modules. Because the narrower the agent is, the narrower the scope of the laws deriving from the model will be. So the broader the individual we are depicting in the model, the broader, obviously, our understanding of economics.
Yeah.
And I always used it, if only just to dissect, the limits, the scope and the limits of the model that we are proposed in our, current modern economics papers. So
yeah, I think that's a great comment, and I'm just thinking when you're talking that when you just look at pure self-interest or utility maximizing behavior, and if we use that as a guiding light only, then when you look at organizations and executives, they begin to think that, well, okay, if I do well for myself, that's good. But by doing so, I will also benefit the society. And there's a fine line between that self-interest and without having these sort of moral foundations that Adam Smith talks about, the impartial observer and so on, that we begin to get into the areas of greed that sociology literature has shown for decades has a harmful effect on society. So there's this very famous film called The Wall Street, where Gordon Gekko talks about greed is good. That is very much of a Mandevillean thinking that private vices will result into public good.
That's not really Smith's representation of society, is it?
No, not quite.
Let's put it that way.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Mikko, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to host you. If you want to know more about Smith and his analysis of self-interest in the market economy, you will soon have available Mikko's paper on this subject. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for asking such great questions.
Thank you again. Thank you all very much for listening. This podcast is edited by the Vinson Centre at the University of Buckingham. You can visit our website at vinsoncentre.com to access our podcast series and know more about the programs and events we host, both in Buckingham and in London. Please subscribe to our newsletter if you want to receive timely information on the Vinson Centre's agenda.